what happens if we don't get enough sleep?
So people who get less than 6 hours have a whole host of more negative health outcomes. You're more likely to be obese, to get diabetes, to have heart disease, stroke, certain types of cancers, dementia.
Wow. So the 4 hours sleep a night, but I live a really healthy life, but I'm getting 4 hours sleep a night. That is awful for you.
If you don't sleep, you do die. It's a massive thing, and it's a huge privilege to do my job and to help people and to genuinely change their lives. Hi, I'm Dr Lindsay Browning, and I'm in great company.
What actually is sleep?
So when we fall asleep, our brain doesn't just turn off. It's not like when you turn your phone off. It's more like a scan, and it's amazing. It is the most active time of your brain. It's incredible.
Mouth taping is a big thing at the moment.
Yeah.
I tried to do it the other night and I woke up.
Please don't.
What?
TikTok craze. There's loads of sleep stuff on TikTok. Again, it's like, where are you getting your information from?
Wow. So you think these sort of TikTok crazes that come up on social media are all marketing stunts? Before we start, can you explain to everyone who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm a sleep expert. I have a degree in psychology, a degree in neuroscience, and a doctorate from the University of Oxford in insomnia. And I specialise in helping people with sleeping problems and educating people on better sleep, and working with different industries like schools and the NHS police about shift work and anything sleep related, basically.
It's funny because it's one of those things that sort of growing up, you want to be a police officer or you want to be an actor or a singer, but it's kind of a unique thing to get into.
Yeah, especially back then. So, I did a degree in psychology and neuroscience, and sleep is one of those things that, especially, almost 20 years ago when I graduated, it was really not very well researched. I mean, now it's everywhere, but back then, sleep was even seen as a bit of an inconvenience, a nothing kind of subject. It's something that we do as a waste of time. But, I knew, and it was really interesting to understand what's going on in the brain, especially neuroscience-wise. So I just fell into looking at sleep, researching sleep. And as I researched it more and learnt more about it, I found that there was a huge amount of people who really struggle with their sleep. And that's where my interest in insomnia and helping people with their sleeping problems came from.
Normally, when people find sort of an interest in something, it means that it's probably affected themselves. Growing up, was your sleep affected?
Yeah, so loads of people ask that, but actually I'm genuinely a really good sleeper. I've always been a really good sleeper. I love sleep. I dream loads. I remember my dreams. I've always been really interested in sleep and dreaming. But it's just really the aspect of people struggling with their sleep that I really wanted to go into helping. It's like counselling or being a medical doctor. It's going into something where you can help people, and that's just the niche where I saw like there was a bit I could help with.
What actually is sleep?
Great question. So when we fall asleep, our brain doesn't just turn off. It's not like when you turn your phone off. It's more like a scan, and it's amazing. It is the most active time of your brain. It's incredible. So we have different parts of sleep: light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep.
Okay, break those down for me.
So REM sleep, start with that. That stands for rapid eye movement sleep. And that's because during that part of sleep, your eyes, like under your shut, your eyelids are shut, but your eyeballs themselves are moving rapidly from side to side. So if you are with a partner and you look at them and they're asleep, you can tell if they're in REM sleep because their eyeballs, you can see them moving quickly behind your eyelids. And REM sleep is amazing. And your brain activity, if I was stuck electrodes on your head and I was monitoring your brain, I wouldn't be able to tell by just looking at your brain activity if you were awake or asleep in REM sleep, because your brain is so active.
Wow.
And we tend to have vivid dreams at that time. Our brain is processing, it's simulating, it's sort of practicing for the future. You might have dreams about turning up for like one of these, not wearing any clothes, or turning up for an exam naked, or not having revised, or running away from someone. Because our dreaming sleep is often a time for our brain to kind of simulate and practice things that it worries might happen to us. So that's REM sleep. And then deep sleep, our brain looks completely different in deep sleep. and our neurons in our brain are synchronized. They're all kind of firing at the same time. Whereas REM sleep and our brain activity right now, our neurons are firing all over the place and it's all really random. But in deep sleep, all our neurons are firing in like waves. And if you look at the brain activity of our sleep, it looks amazing. It's just like you can see the waves literally of all the neurons firing together, and it's associated with producing different hormones. Children produce growth hormone during deep sleep, and it's a time when our brain is, we don't fully understand every single thing that's going on in the different parts of sleep, but we know that it's associated with a whole host of benefits. And light sleep is where the brain activity looks very, very similar, but the waves are less deep and a little bit faster. So the difference between light sleep and deep sleep is more of a continuum where we can sort of like break it up based on the power of the brain waves. But REM sleep, the brain activity is completely different. And we tend to spend, as an adult, around 55% of the night in light sleep. About when we were 21 years old, about 22% of the night in deep sleep, and about 25-ish in REM sleep. But lots of people think that light sleep is bad, that it's the bad part. And I get calls all the time from people saying, Dr. Browning, can you help me? Because my sleep tracker tells me I get 50% of the night in light sleep, and that's terrible. I need to eliminate light sleep and only have the good quality deep sleep or REM sleep. To which I say to them, that's complete nonsense, because they're all good. There is no such thing as a good bit of sleep and a bad bit of sleep. They're all important. It's like a plate of food. If you think about a balanced meal doesn't involve just one type of food like broccoli. Deep sleep is kind of like broccoli. It's really good for you, but if you only had deep sleep, you wouldn't be healthy at all, because you're missing out on the other parts of sleep that are also just as valuable. Just like a plate of food, you need protein, carbohydrate, calcium. You need all the different parts of food to be healthy. You need all the different parts of sleep to be healthy.
Really?
Yeah, and most people don't know that.
Because I used to have a Whoop, right? I used to track my sleep, and I would wake up and it would say this light sleep and things like that, and I would just be furious. And so I stopped wearing it because I was only having so much light sleep and I was having broken sleep. But you're saying that it's you need it because it's the full plate of food.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually
Are you sure?
Yes, I promise. I promise. It's really easy for us to kind of fixate on one thing, but actually, as with much of life, like eating healthily and exercising, it's all about a balance. And our night sleep is all about a balance, and we need the different parts of sleep to enable us to get all the benefits of that. And to fixate on one part is just silly, because, well, frankly, we can't control it anyway. There's no way we can change the proportion of you can't decide, well, tonight I'm only going to have deep sleep. It's just simply not possible.
So REM sleep, if you were to track it, you wouldn't be able to tell if I'm asleep or awake just by tracking it, because your brain is so active.
Just by looking at your brain activity, for sure. That's why we have to, when we look at polysomnography, which is a PSG, it's a overnight sleep assessment, we put monitors on your eyes to track your eye movement. We put monitors on your heart rate, on your breathing, on your muscle tone, because during REM sleep, yes, your brain activity itself, we can't tell the difference, but your body we can, because during REM sleep, your body tone, your muscle tone becomes paralyzed, so that you don't act out your dreams, basically. Because when we're dreaming, we need to be paralyzed so that we don't start, whacking our partners in the middle of the night and fighting imaginary ninjas that we're dreaming about. So you can tell from these other indicators what's going on and which part of sleep you're in.
As a kid, I used to sleepwalk. And I can sort of remember certain times when I sleptwalk, weirdly enough. And it felt like a dream, but I was obviously sleepwalking. And I've also experienced night terrors, where I've been lying in bed and I feel like I'm awake. My body becomes completely rigid and still, and I can't move. And what I can only describe as sort of like a figure.
That's not a night terror, that's sleep paralysis.
Is it?
Mm-hmm. So sleep paralysis is where you wake up from REM sleep. So if you remember, we talked earlier about the fact that when we're in REM sleep, our body becomes paralyzed. So what can happen is, when you're in REM sleep, you can wake up. Part of your brain can be awake, but the part of your brain is still asleep and in REM sleep. So you wake up and you're conscious and your brain is awake and you open your eyes and you can see the bedroom, but your body is still in the middle of REM sleep and is paralyzed. And it's almost entirely petrifying. So did you feel extremely scared at that
I
point?
couldn't move, and it was almost like I was trying to pull a weight up.
Yeah. And people with sleep paralysis, and it's really fascinating, they'll across the globe, people report the same things. They report seeing a figure at the foot of the bed, or they'll see some kind of figure in the room, and it's really dark. Maybe it's like they'll describe it as a ghost or the devil or a witch or something, or even an alien. And it's always really bad, and they can't move, and they're struggling, they can't scream, they can't make a noise, and they're fighting against it. And it's really petrifying. And then after a while, you'll come out of it, but it's really, really scary. And that can trigger insomnia because people don't want to experience that because it's so petrifying. But actually, sleep paralysis isn't, scientifically, there isn't a demon in your room. It's just your brain interpreting the fact that you were in REM sleep, dreaming kind of sleep, but you were physically paralyzed because your body was still asleep, which is what happens at that point. So what I tell people who experience sleep paralysis is rather than trying to fight it, because if you're trying to fight it and wake up, you can't, is try and concentrate on moving your little finger, just one finger. Just lie there and think, okay, I know what's going on. I'm having REM sleep, but my consciousness, I am awake, but I'm still trapped in REM sleep. So it's scientifically, that's what's going on. There isn't really a scary figure. I'm just going to try and concentrate on moving my little finger. And if you can then, once you move your little finger, you'll break it and you'll wake up. But that's an easy way. Just keep yourself calm, concentrate on moving one part of your body, and then you'll be able to wake up.
When it first happens, it's the scariest thing. And if you look at images from sort of Tudor times, it's the same image of this devil standing above you, almost sitting on your chest. The devil sits on your chest.
Yes.
That's why you can't move. It's so strange that the brain goes to sort of a witch, a sort of figure that scares you. And everyone across the globe has the same thing.
And I love to talk to people about alien abduction stories. So if you think about alien abduction stories, they are almost always an alien came into my bedroom in the middle of the night and paralyzed me. And I'm like, it's sleep paralysis. That's what happened.
Sleepwalking. What happens when we sleepwalk?
So sleepwalking happens in a different part of sleep. So if you imagine, REM sleep, our body is paralyzed. Sleepwalking tends to happen in deep sleep. And when we sleepwalk, we're not really dreaming because sleepwalkers aren't running around the house trying to, do exciting stuff. They just walk calmly down the stairs. They might open the fridge, get some food, or they might go to the toilet, possibly in the wardrobe because they're kind of asleep. It's not a great thing. So sleepwalking, it's more common in children than in adults. There's nothing wrong with it, nothing sort of, but it can be dangerous if you're sleepwalking and you might be at danger of falling down the stairs or climbing out of a window. So if you or someone because if you're asleep in your bedroom, you might, during sleepwalking, open the window and go out. So it's really important to sort of proof your your house if you think that you're at risk of sleepwalking by locking the windows, maybe even putting a stair gate at the top of the stairs to help protect you from that. These kinds of things.
But I always thought if you wake up a sleepwalker, it's dangerous.
It's not.
It can't be, right? Producer Jemima has written that and said, this is what producer Jemima has written, said, is it dangerous to wake up a sleepwalker? Will it make them go mad?
No, absolutely not. It's fine. But you don't need to wake them up. You could just gently push them back, get them back into bed. You don't need to wake them up, but it's not going to be dangerous if you do. But they're in deep sleep, so it's quite hard to wake a sleepwalker because they're so deeply asleep. So just generally guide them back to bed, put them in bed. It'd be fine.
So how many hours a night should we sleep?
So for an adult 18 to 64, the recommendations are somewhere between 7 to 9 hours. And this is where like a really huge misconception comes in because 8 hours sleep is often banded around as the perfect amount of sleep. But that's so unhelpful because it's just the average. We're not the same height. We're not the same weight. People don't all have the same sleep needs. So if you're trying to get 8 hours sleep because you think that's the magic number, if you only need 7 hours sleep, you're going to be tossing and turning for an hour every night because you don't need 8 hours sleep. Or if you need more, and I'm someone who definitely needs more than 8 hours. I can function fine on 8 hours sleep, but I'm really good on just under 9. And that's where the whole partner thing, going back to the beginning, you can get disparity because if your partner only needs 7 hours, but you need 9, and you're both going to bed at the same time and trying to get 8 hours sleep, you're both going to be unhappy. So it's about trying to get the right amount of sleep for you, and that might be different to your partner, to your siblings. It's very individual.
And then what happens if we don't get enough sleep? What happens if we're sleeping 3, 4, 5 hours a night?
So we can survive on less sleep for sure. And as humans, of course we can, because there are times in our life when we have to. We've got a brand new baby, or if you're, faced with a crisis, God forbid you're in a war zone or something, we can't get enough sleep. But that doesn't mean to say that we're thriving. Just like we can survive on eating absolute rubbish, it doesn't mean that we're doing good for our bodies. So people who get less than 6 hours sleep a night, have a whole host of more negative health outcomes than those who get 7 to 9 hours. So, like before I mentioned, you're more likely to be obese, to get diabetes, to have heart disease, stroke, to get certain types of cancers, to get dementia. It disrupts your immune system. It means you're more at risk of car accidents. It's huge. But equally and interestingly, if people sleep for way too much, there's also an associated risk of poorer health outcomes. But people who sleep for a lot, like 10 hours, 11 hours, often that's not because they're sleeping too much is causing them to be ill, but it's more likely that they're sleeping too much because they're already ill, if that makes sense.
If I was to say to you, I get 8 hours sleep a night, but I smoke 40 cigarettes a day. Or I would say to you, I live a really clean life, but I get 4 hours sleep a night. What is better?
They're both not good. They're both not good. I think that, goodness, that's a really hard one. They're both terrible. I would say,
Really?
yeah, they're both equally
But they're
terrible.
both equally as bad as each other.
I think so, yeah.
So the 4 hours sleep a night, but I live a really healthy life, but I'm getting 4 hours sleep a night. That is awful for you.
Absolutely, it really is. It shortens your life expectancy. It puts you at huge risk of so many things, of depression, of anxiety. Yeah, it's massive. And people who think, well, I'm fine, I can function on 4 hours sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can function on 4 hours sleep, but you can also function smoking 60 cigarettes a day. But it's not good for you.
It's amazing because we look at alcohol, drugs, cigarettes. There's a big thing with fast food and all this, and but
Ultra processed foods.
ultra processed food, everything. But we're not really looking at sleep as the lack of sleep that we're getting because of our lives, our stressful lives, the city life, whatever it is, and it's sort of the easiest thing which is out there, but we're not focusing on it.
Yeah, and it's free. That's what's
totally
crazy. You just have to go to bed. And so there are two groups of people. There are people with insomnia who know this and listening to this, they're just right now, they're listening going, oh, I'm so angry because I know sleep's important. I'm trying, but I can't.
Yeah.
But there are a huge amount of people who aren't prioritizing their sleep. They just genuinely aren't. And they're scrolling through. Sleep procrastination is when you go to bed and you meant to go to sleep, but before you know it, you spent an hour or two scrolling through TikTok or Snapchat or whatever. And then, oops, it's 1 a.m, I better go to bed. And then you've got to be up at 7 for work. Well, 1 until 7 is only 6 hours. So there's no way you can get the recommended 7 to 9 hours sleep if you're only trying to sleep for 6 hours.
What can lead to death quicker? Lack of food or lack of sleep?
Well, I think that no one has made it past 5 days of no sleep before dying. It's like you cannot, you can survive, water. If you have water but no food, you can survive several weeks with no food. But no one's made it like a week or so with no sleep because you die.
What
basically.
happens?
Or people just sleep. They can't be kept awake. They just can't.
What happens?
But you start hallucinating. People go completely. There are people who've done experiments. They've tried to stay awake for a certain amount of time, and they start to hallucinate. It's really bad. And basically, your body, even if you're trying to stay awake, you start having micro sleeps. You just start falling asleep. You just cannot. You cannot stay awake. But it's you can't keep yourself awake because your body is going to sleep whether you want to or not. And I use this example a lot with my clients actually, because lots of my clients think that they're never going to sleep again. But of course you will. You're going to fall asleep whether you want to or not, because even if you're stuck in a room with a tiger, this is an example I use a lot, about how anxiety affects our sleep. So if you were in bed and you're really calm and relaxed and suddenly there was a tiger in your bedroom, well, you'd be wide awake because there's a tiger in your bedroom. Basically, because if you are anxious, there's no way you can sleep. And we would all know that there's no way we would fall asleep for a second. And if that tiger stayed in our bedroom for 24 hours, we would be wide awake. 48 hours, wide awake. 72 hours. At this point, like, we're starting to get sleepy. And at some point, I would think by day 4, definitely by day 5, I would fall asleep in a room if I was stuck there with the tiger, even though I know that when I fall asleep, the tiger's going to eat me, because you cannot stay awake, even if your life literally depends on it.
It's interesting because I think this is the moment we should talk about insomnia, because it affects so many people. I mean, so many people. My mother-in-law talks about it a lot. I've had it. And it's a really scary thing. And it's a self acting thing that as soon as you start thinking about sleep, you're worried about going to bed, it becomes a cycle in your head. I'm not going to sleep. And then ultimately what happens is you don't sleep.
Yeah.
You wake up the next day, but I have to go to work. I have to look after the kids. I have to do a sports thing. Oh God. And then you don't sleep and it becomes worse and worse and worse. And then you get yourself in a real pickle.
Yeah.
And I think the scary thing about it is that we don't really know anything about it. And it's the anxiety within our body that really scares us. And then we see bed as fear rather than seeing it as a comfort place, which is really important. So I want to talk about it, but I also want to make sure that anyone listening right now who is perhaps being triggered or is going through insomnia, there are ways to get through it. Yeah. There are ways to cure it, to make it feel better, and you're not going to be stuck in this for the rest of your life. Isn't that right?
Definitely. I mean, I've had clients who've had insomnia, who've been terrible sleepers for 40 plus years. They just thought that was just who they were. There was nothing they could do about it. But once they do CBTI, basically it's cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, once they address their problems and fix their behaviors that are causing it and deal with those anxieties, their sleep is fine. So yeah, there really is a lot we can do to... There really is a lot to do.
Just give me an example of someone who came to see you, who was really bad, and I want to know sort of, what their sleep was like, and you managed to help them.
Yeah. So I have people who've come to see me who had literally quit their jobs. They felt that they couldn't have a job because they couldn't guarantee they were going to sleep the night before. So rather than, they'd been not going to work on time, and then after a while it just became unsustainable, so they quit their job thinking that would help, and they also thought maybe, well, it's the job stress that's causing my sleeping problem, so I'll quit my job, and of course the sleeping problem remained. So working with them to fix their sleep's now fine, and they're able to live their life again.
It's such an isolating thing as well.
Yeah.
Because you're alone at night.
Yes, absolutely. And the jealousy of your partner that they're asleep and you feel like you're the only person in the world. And so when I talk to them and they explain their fears and what's going on, I say, I really feel for you, but you're really normal. For someone with sleeping problems, this is exactly what people go through, and the worries that you have, the fears you have are completely normal. And that's great because we can fix that and get you through that.
Wow, that is so comforting.
Yeah.
That is so comforting. I remember when I have tinnitus, and when it first started, it's just, and it's in some ways, it's a little bit like insomnia, just it's not anything with sleep, but it's the same sort of anxiety driving thing that you have. And I remember I went to see a specialist and they said, don't worry, you'll get through it, I promise you. And it was those words that made me think, oh my God, what is the percentage of people in the world, in the UK, that have insomnia?
So at any one time, I think it's about 1 in 3 who are struggling with short-term sleeping issues, but chronic,
3?
who have some kind of problem sleeping. So I'm sure, in this room, there's probably people who are not sleeping brilliantly, but about 10% of people have had chronic insomnia, which is where it's not just a period of poor sleep because you're a bit stressed about something and my sleep isn't great right now, but it'll be okay later. Chronic insomnia is where it's become an ongoing issue that people are really struggling with their sleep, and it's every week, every month, and they really need more help with it.
Insomnia, where does it come from?
So as you said, it's sort of anxiety. So I like to think of insomnia, or describe it as a phobia of not sleeping. So if you think about it, insomnia is where your brain goes, oh my goodness, if I don't sleep, tomorrow is going to be a disaster. And that thought process, that fear of not sleeping, then causes such anxiety that you then don't sleep. It's like you said, self-actualizing. It makes itself happen because you're so worried that you're not going to sleep well, that then you're so anxious, like that tiger in your bedroom, that you can't sleep.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're 8, including you now, but 6 people in the room. Hands up who struggles with their sleep out of the team. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4
Wow.
out of 6.
Wow.
That is a lot.
Yeah, it really is. And the trouble is, lots of people just think it's just who they are. They can't do anything about it. And there really is so much they can do about it, which is, sad.
If someone is struggling with their sleep and they're listening to this, right, and they're going, please help me, Dr. Lindsay, please help me. What should they do in order to make things better for them?
Okay. So, really, really common thing people do when they're not sleeping well is to start going to bed much earlier and sleeping in the morning, because they think, well, I'm not getting enough sleep, so I will give myself more time in bed to give me more opportunity to sleep, which seems like it makes sense. But just as you described earlier, what you're doing then is you're spending more time in bed not sleeping. So your bed starts to become this really negative place where you're frustrated because you're spending all this time in bed, unable to sleep, frustrated, anxious. And then it becomes that when you go to bed, you're stressed and anxious because you're in this negative place. So sometimes going to bed much earlier and sleeping in much later in the morning isn't helpful. So have a think about how much time are you spending in your bed and how much sleep are you getting? And if there is a huge difference in that, maybe try and bring them a bit nearer. If you're going to bed at 9, getting up at 7, but only sleeping for 6 hours, that's 10 hours in bed, which is crazy. So maybe go to bed at 11 and get up at 6:30 or 7, just to shrink a bit of that time off. And then secondly, is people just lie in bed trying to force sleep. And people think, well, at least if I'm in bed and resting, or I don't want to get up because then I'll wake myself up. So people spend huge amounts of time just lying in bed trying to force themselves to sleep, because that anxiety, that fear of, well, I have to sleep, otherwise I won't be able to cope tomorrow. So they're trying to force sleep so much. And actually, just getting out of bed. If you can't sleep, if you've been lying in bed either at the beginning of the night or you wake up in the middle of the night and you just can't fall back to sleep again, you can't fall asleep, and you've been lying there for what feels like about 20 minutes. You don't need to look at a clock, but that sort of gut feel of, yeah, it's probably been about 20 minutes. It's been long enough that, yeah, I've given it a shot and it's not happening. Then just get up. Just get up out of bed and go and do something else for a little while. Go and read a book. Go and paint a picture. Go and do something.
Calming things.
And something to distract you, to make you not think about sleep anymore. What I don't want you to do is to get out of bed and go and read a boring book, because people do that, or go and do some meditation out of bed, because that can actually just make you were in bed trying to sleep and now you're in your lounge reading a book that's really boring, and now you're just like thinking, oh, this is such a boring book, but I have to read it because my sleep's bad and I'm so annoyed. You're still thinking about sleep. I want you to think about like having a break. So get out of bed and go and have a break from trying to sleep. Think about if if your job, whatever your job is, if you were doing a project, you were working on your computer trying to do a project, and the words weren't coming, you just couldn't do it. You wouldn't just sit there at your computer trying to force it. You'd go, oh, it's not working for me right now. And you'd get up and you'd go and have a cup of tea and you'd go and watch a bit of telly and you'd have a break. And then you'd come back and you're like, oh, I can do it now. That's what you're trying to achieve in the middle of the night. You're trying to get out of bed to have a break from trying to force sleep and failing, so that when you go back to bed again, when you're feeling sleepier, you've got a reset and you're calmer and you're in a better place to sleep.
And go and try some CBTI.
Yes, so CBTI, if you have like chronic insomnia, if you're really struggling. So good sleep hygiene is the sort of have a wind down time before bed, all the good sleep rules that you know, which is great for normal sleepers whose sleep maybe is just a bit iffy. But if you feel that you're someone with chronic insomnia who's really struggling, then CBTI is not the same as just sleep hygiene. It's a program that you should be able to get access to probably for your GP. You can get access to it. You can read a book and follow a plan. You can speak to a private therapist like someone like myself. But there are options available to you for free or minimal cost. Go through that program and it is sort of 80, 85, 90% effective at curing insomnia. It's really amazing.
I was always told, because I used to have broken sleep, so I'd wake up in the middle of the night, I'd need to go to the bathroom, or I'd just wake up. I was told to never look at the clock.
Definitely. Never look at the clock. It's just so unhelpful because always everyone should have an alarm set in the morning, even if you're someone who goes, well, I don't need an alarm because I'm always awake before the alarm. Well, if you don't have an alarm set, then when you wake up, you have to look at the time to see if it's morning yet. And every time you look at the time, your brain goes, oh, that means we've had this amount of sleep, and that means it's this long till we have to get up. And you're doing these mental calculations, which make you stressed and anxious. So do not have a clock that you can see from bed. If you wake up in the night, all you have to do is think, has my alarm gone off? Yes or no? If no, okay, I'll see if I can go back to sleep again. And if it has, we'll get up.
Is having sex before you sleep a good thing?
Always. As long as you're with someone you love. So when we have sex, we do produce hormones like oxytocin that might be helpful for sleep. It helps us to be calmer. Now, depending how you do it, if it's very vigorous, then vigorous exercise right before bed might make you a bit too awake. So if it's not so vigorous, I can't believe I'm discussing this, but basically there are lots of hormones we produce when we love someone and we are intimate that help us to feel relaxed and safe and loved and calm, which is great. But if you're too hot, then you might struggle to fall asleep. So you might want to do it, a little before bed so that you're not too hot.
I heard that there is I think they do it in the Nordic countries where people sleep in different beds. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
So there's lots of evidence to show that bed sharing is a poor person's issue, basically, and that rich people tend to sleep in separate beds, or if not separate rooms, or if you are the late Queen and Prince Philip, separate wings of the house, I believe. But us mere poor mortals, we have to share a bed because the kids have got all the other bedrooms. If you do sleep separately, then if you move around, you're going to be able to not be disrupted by somebody else. You're going to be able to feel less worried that you're going to interfere with somebody else, especially if you have sleeping difficulty. You might feel that you don't want to interrupt your partner by moving. And also temperature regulation. Maybe the Scandinavian sleep method isn't having two separate beds, but having two separate duvets. And that's a really good compromise.
Yeah.
So you can share a bed, but have two single duvets. And if you're someone who gets too cold in the night and your partner gets too hot, then you can have different togs. You can throw one off and without disrupting them too much. And they don't steal the duvet as well.
I think most of us can agree, though, in a relationship, when you know your partner's out of town or you're sleeping by yourself, you're thinking, this is going to be a great night's sleep.
Yeah,
we all agree with that.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And you can just roll onto any side of the bed that you want.
And get the cool side and then go back to the warm side.
Yeah, that's the best. That is the best. Apparently, a huge amount of breakups happen from sleep patterns.
I don't have the stats for that, but I do know that I deal with in my clinical work a lot of people who massively struggle in their relationships for sure because of sleep issues. Either one partner needs or wants a lot more sleep than the other, and then there's this disparity. You're both trying to go to bed at the same time and get up at the same time, which naturally happens with couples. But if one of you doesn't need as much sleep as the other, then one of you is going to be tossing and turning and frustrated. Or if you're different times of the day, like you said nocturnal, but it's kind of like larks and owls. Some of us are early birds, some of us are later. Lots of people are in the middle. But if you're a couple and one of you wants to get up early and go to bed early, and the other one wants to stay up late and sleep in, that can cause a daily conflict where you're not in the same sort of time zone as each other. So yeah, it's a really common issue.
And the problem with that, I suppose, is what happens is that when you're in a couple, and say I'm an early riser, and my partner likes to sleep late, I see that as lazy. But actually, no, it's just a different sleep pattern.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a late person. I'm a night owl for sure. And my husband here, he's an early person. So we have that conflict. But it's about understanding and compromise, but not making it a problem. So for example, me being a late person, I like to stay up late, and going to bed isn't something that I naturally think, oh, I should go to bed early. But that's not great because I have to be up for work. I have to be up for the kids. I have to be up for life things. So I have to remind myself to go to bed early. So having someone who's on the other end of the spectrum can kind of help nudge you into the better frame of mind. But equally, first thing in the morning, I'm not fun to be with because mornings aren't my friend. So as a couple, it's that understanding that, yeah, Lindsay isn't going to be the best bright and early. She's not going to jump out of bed and go and make a cup of tea first thing in the morning because that's just not who she is. But if you want someone to get things done at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, I'm that person.
What we're talking about is something, is it called the chronotype?
Chronotype.
Chronotype. And you have, what I can see here, but this might be wrong, we have the lion,
Yep.
the bear, and the owls or wolves.
So there's owls and larks are like, larks are the early people who go to bed early, wake up early, and owls are go to bed late, wake up late. And then you have animals, so the bear, the wolf, the lion, and the dolphin, which is another way of looking at it. Yeah,
dolphin out of nowhere.
So yeah, the dolphin.
Dolphin out of nowhere.
So if we go with the animal, because larks and owls is very pivotal. It's like early or late. Whereas the animal chronotypes, they cover the same content but in a bit more niche. So the lion is kind of the lark. It's someone who gets up early and goes to bed early. The wolf is kind of like the owl who goes to bed late, wakes up late. The bear is the majority of people, basically. And that's people who, they get up at the normal kind of time, go to bed at normal kind of time, and they're feeling their most energized, most awake in the middle of the day. And the dolphin, that sort of weird one out of the side, is someone who is a short sleeper, someone whose sleep is really bad quality. So those are people who really struggle with sleep. Maybe they can't fall asleep easily. They wake up throughout the night and they're not getting enough sleep and they're just always tired. So you might think of new parents or someone going through a really stressful time, or a menopausal woman who's really struggling with night sweats and hot flashes. Those are sort of the dolphins.
How do couples overcome difference in sleep cycles? How do you do that in the couple? If someone's listening right now and they're saying that my partner snores, or someone says that my partner goes to bed at 1 a.m, or whatever, because there'll be loads of people listening right now. How do you counter that in a relationship?
So those are two different things. So the snoring, to be fair, people think, oh, snoring's just annoying. But often snoring is a sign of a greater issue. So often it's a sign of sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is when someone stops breathing during the night. They have some kind of either obstructive sleep apnea, where they're breathing, the airway is blocked for some reason. So maybe it's enlarged tonsils or adenoids, maybe the weight of your throat, especially when people are overweight, it can physically close up and stop you breathing during the night. And snoring is a partial blockage of the airway. If you imagine, it's like your airway isn't fully closed, but it's a bit closed. So the throat vibrates and you get that noise of snoring, which as a partner is really frustrating and annoying. But for the person experiencing it, actually, they're not getting good quality sleep. So if somebody does have a snoring partner, rather than just nudging them or being angry with them about it, it's a really good idea to make sure that there isn't something else. It's not a sign of a deeper issue like obstructive sleep apnea, which actually is really dangerous because it causes strain on your heart, it causes sleep deprivation, it ruins the quality of your sleep. And it really is, I think 85%, it's estimated that 85% of people with obstructive sleep apnea don't know that they have it. So they just going through life, snoring, feeling chronically fatigued, and just thinking, well, that's just who I am. But actually, there's likely to be this issue. 1.5 million people have sleep apnea in the UK. That's a huge amount of people and a huge issue that, if we get it treated and resolved, they'll be able to sleep better, they'll wake up feeling more refreshed, and their partner won't be, really angry with them that they can't sleep because of the snoring partner.
Dr. Lindsay, I think I have a slight bit of sleep apnea because, two examples. So when I'm on a flight and and I'm a flight and I'm sleeping upright like this, when I'm on a flight for some whatever reason, I wake up and I find I'm not breathing properly. And then the other night when I was sleeping, I had a dream that I wasn't breathing, and I woke up and I wasn't breathing.
Right.
And it was really scary. And I couldn't catch my breath. And then I came out of it and then I could catch my breath. Is that sleep apnea or is that a nightmare?
So it does sound like sleep apnea. So apnea, the word apnea means it's sort of that pause in breathing. And many people will have an apnea or two during the night, and that's kind of normal. But if they're happening a lot, it becomes a sort of a chronic and actually diagnosable issue that needs to be resolved. So the fact that you've reported signs of sleep apnea are waking up gasping for breath, waking up choking, having dreams about choking, having dreams that there's something stuck in your throat, feeling chronically fatigued during the daytime, falling asleep really, really, really quickly at night, which people might think is, oh, it's really great. I'm such a great sleeper. I fall asleep within seconds. But actually, that's often a sign of sleep deprivation, that the sleep you're getting isn't good enough quality, so you fall straight to sleep. So do you fall straight to sleep really quickly?
Straight to sleep.
Okay, so as a sleep expert, that doesn't make me happy. That makes me worry. If someone says I fall instantly asleep, I first of all think, gosh, is there a reason for that? Are you sleep deprived? And it could be that you're not giving yourself enough time to sleep, or it could be that when you do sleep, you keep waking up throughout the night, stopping breathing, sleep apnea, which is causing you to not have good quality sleep, meaning that you fall asleep really, really quickly. So I would suggest it's definitely worth getting it checked out. You can speak to your doctor, but the symptoms of snoring, waking up feeling like you haven't been breathing, waking up gasping for breath are definitely signs that indicate sleep apnea.
But the tricky thing, right? So I'm here listening to this, right? And I fall asleep straight away.
Yeah.
And then I've had this sort of slight problem, which I've noticed maybe a couple of times, where I'm sort of gasping for breath when I sleep. I definitely feel jaded and tired throughout the day sometimes, but I still have a lot of energy. But I put that down to that I'm just working and doing a lot. My life is sort of constant entertainment. And someone listening right now will say, well, of course I fall asleep straight away.
Yeah.
I have a really hard day. I have kids. I have to teach. I have to do this. I have to do that, whatever it is. So how can you differentiate the two?
Yeah, it's really difficult. So I would say, your partner, are they awake when you're asleep? Can they look at you and say, oh, actually, I have noticed that you stop breathing during the night? These kinds of things. You can get sleep trackers, especially modern things like the modern Apple Watch, that measure your oximetry, which means the oxygen content in your blood, as well as sleep tracking. And they're not diagnostic, they're not the same as having a doctor overnight sort of sleep assessment, but they can give an indication of sleep apnea, because if you're wearing this device and through the night it notices that your oxygen content in your blood keeps dropping, and that you keep waking up throughout the night, these are indicators of obstructive sleep apnea. But yeah, for some people, they will fall straight to sleep because they're in a season of life where they're just so busy. And that's not necessarily a worry at all. But if you do fall straight to sleep, it's often a sign that you aren't getting enough sleep. And if you are only sleeping for like 7 hours a night, say, maybe you actually need a bit more sleep than that. So maybe try going to bed a bit earlier, giving yourself a bit more time to sleep in the morning, and see if then you do feel more rested and less tired during the day.
I try and get into bed a little earlier, and I try and do the thing where I switch my screen off. So I don't look at screen and now read a book.
Nice.
I mean, my mother would be so proud. I now read before I go to bed. But I also wake up early. And the sun comes through or something happens, but I wake up at sort of around 6. Even without my alarm, I just do wake up at that time, even if I'm slightly tired. And it's sort of, I'm in this regime where I can't get out of that. And I don't know why, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. When I was a teenager, I could sleep until 2 in the afternoon. I was absolutely great. Now I'm lucky if I get 8 hours sleep a night. I'm lucky. Not because I have a busy life or because I need to get up early, just because that's my sort of rhythm that I have.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. The fact that teenagers sleep in is a biological fact, basically. And lots of people think, oh, teenagers are so lazy. But actually, when we hit the sort of 11, 12, 13 years of age, our circadian rhythm, our biological kind of internal clock, starts to shift a bit. So naturally, teenagers start to produce melatonin a bit later in the day. So they're genetically, biologically, supposed to go to bed and go to sleep a bit later and sleep in the morning. That's what's happening. And we think evolutionarily it's so that teenagers could have a bit of time at night when all the adults were asleep. When we were cavemen, the teenagers would stay up a bit later, so they would have a bit of a teenager time to find themselves when the parents were all asleep, and then they would sleep in the morning, and that was fine. But modern day society doesn't work like that, because school still starts at the same time, and loads of teenagers are going to bed really late because their bodies want them to stay up late and do stuff like be on social media or gaming or talk to their friends, but they still have to get up for school. And I was just reading just recently that just under 3/4 of teenagers don't get the recommended amount of sleep. It should be like 8 to 10 hours. And almost 3/4 of our teens aren't getting the recommended amount of sleep. And it's partly because of that that shift to that later sleep-wake cycle, which you experienced as a teenager. And then when we hit adulthood, it kind of goes back to normal again. Lots of us will find that we become more early people again, whereas when we were teenagers, we were going to bed at 2 a.m. and sleeping until midday happily.
Do women and men need different amounts of sleep?
Yes, actually. Studies have shown that women need about 11 minutes more. It's not a lot, but around sort of 11 minutes more sleep. So women tend to need a little bit more sleep than men, but women are much more likely to have insomnia and have sleeping difficulties than men. And that's partly because of maybe a disproportionate amount of childcare responsibilities that tend to fall on women, which maybe in the future won't be such a disparity. But also hormonal fluctuations, which is a massive thing. So, women tend to have, they have a menstrual cycle once a month. If they get pregnant, if they stop being pregnant, if they have perimenopause, menopause, at all these times, their hormones change and fluctuate, and that can have a significant impact on sleep. So, that's why women tend to have worse sleep than men.
Dr. Lindsay, why do we dream?
Oh, it's a great question. Lots of reasons. We think that it's a way of processing and dealing with emotion. So, for example, PTSD, if you've had something traumatic happen, like a car accident, often people will dream repeatedly about that car accident, and they'll keep reliving the trauma, which is really sad, really terrible, because it's the last thing you want to be experiencing. So we think it's our brain's way of kind of trying to process what happened and come to terms with it and understand it. And the content of our dreams, let's put PTSD dreams to one side, but for people who just normal dreamers, the content of the dream maybe isn't quite so important as the emotional sort of underlying themes.
Explain that to me. So give me an example.
So because you dream about a teapot doesn't really mean as much as the fact that the teapot was breaking and that you're really sad about it breaking. It's probably more like about the emotions going on.
Wow.
And because there is lots of dream interpretation, and again, scientifically, there is no evidence about dream interpretation, but it doesn't mean to say I'm open to anything.
What do you believe?
On that side, I'm more of a scientist about it. So people say to me, what does it mean that I dreamt that I flew an airplane and it turned into a dragon? Like, I don't know. It just means that you like dragons. I don't know. But some people, but it doesn't mean to say that there aren't people who maybe, I don't know. Yeah, but I'm a scientist, so I'm like, let's not worry about that.
But then when I dream about losing my teeth, does that mean I'm worried about money?
Again, I think losing your teeth is probably one of those dreams that that could be sleep apnea related, because again, it's about the dryness in your mouth and maybe a choking. That
I do choke sometimes in my sleep, in my dreams.
I think that might come back to, again, the fact that you're potentially at risk of sleep apnea rather than you're losing money.
Wow, this is simply fascinating. Do some people not dream?
No, everyone dreams. That's a great question, because I have lots of people say, I never dream. Everyone dreams. So my husband, when I stuck the electrodes on his head, so he almost never dreams. He never remembers dreaming. I always remember dreaming. But it's because we tend to dream, we're more likely to dream during REM sleep. So we don't dream the whole night. We'll have dreams throughout the night. And if you wake up from a part of sleep where you weren't dreaming, you just won't remember that dream. And if you've ever had a dream and you wake up, you'll know that the second you woke up, it was already vivid. And then as you're awake, it's almost like it starts to, like smoke, just drift away. And you're like, oh my goodness, I can't even remember my dream. It only happened a minute ago. So if you don't tend to wake up from within a dreaming part of sleep, you won't remember your dreams. So I did polysomnography. I stuck electrodes on my husband's head. He doesn't wake up from REM sleep. He wakes up from a different part of sleep, which is in line with the reality of what he says, which is, I never really remember my dreams. But everyone dreams. You just because you don't remember them doesn't mean they aren't happening. It doesn't mean they aren't doing good, because dreaming sleep is really important for memory. We think for memory consolidation and for processing emotion and processing all sorts of stuff.
I haven't drunk in about 4 months now. I haven't drunk in 2025, and I'm dreaming way more. It's amazing, and I think probably because my sleep pattern is better, so I'm probably having more REM sleep. That means,
and alcohol affects REM sleep. So by not drinking alcohol, you're likely to have better and more REM sleep.
As a doctor, and looking at sort of science, when you have things which are more sort of homeopathic in a way, and you kind of want to lean into that, maybe drinking lavender tea, maybe having acupuncture, whatever it
Yeah.
is. But also you have your sort of logical brain, which goes, well, it hasn't been scientifically proven. So then you're sort of juggling your
Yeah.
ideas in a way.
So that's why, in the sleep world, recently especially, the sleep world has become full of people who are out to get your money, and that makes me really sad because
Explain this more, though. I'm interested in this.
like the sleep industry is worth millions, if not, I don't know, probably not billions, but it's worth a lot of money. People make a lot of money selling you things that are going to help you sleep, and their motivation, for some people, is to make money. And therefore, it's really hard as a consumer to know the difference. Is this product that I'm being told is going to really help my sleep, is it really going to help my sleep? And, and I deal with people with chronic insomnia, people who are really genuinely struggling with their mental health. Lots of people, my clients, they've quit their jobs because their sleep is so bad. They can't cope day to day. And lots of the clients that I see have spent a huge amount of money on gadgets and supplements and accessories that they've read somewhere, been promised it's going to fix their sleep. But scientifically, the gold standard treatment for chronic insomnia is a thing called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBTI, which is robust. It's like proven with countless studies to be incredibly effective. Whereas things like a particular, I don't know, particular kind of pillow or a
Or honey
particular,
that you spread on.
yeah, or supplements like magnesium is really, really popular, for example. All these supplements, that there are elements of truth to most of these things for sure, but if you're saying this is going to massively help your sleep, it's not. Like drinking milk. Milk contains tryptophan, which we turn into melatonin, so that's a good thing. If you want a warm glass of milk before bed, in theory the warmth of the drink is going to help your it sort of raises your body temperature ever so slightly, and then as you cool down, your body temperature starts to drop, which helps you to fall asleep. The tryptophan in the milk we could turn to melatonin, so it's got science behind it, but the effect size is so tiny, and there is no way that a warm glass of milk before bed is going to fix chronic insomnia. But of course, it's very cheap. So I'm very happy for people to try things if they have the money to spend and they want to try them. Brilliant. But if someone's selling you a special milk that costs £300 and they say, oh, this is going to cure your insomnia, well, the science just isn't there. But if you want to warm up a glass of milk and have it before bed, please do so, because you've got nothing to lose.
And the issue is, and I want to talk about insomnia. The tricky thing about insomnia is a lot of insomnia is probably developed through anxiety. And when you're anxious about not being able to sleep,
Yeah.
and then you're given, hey, you're typically going to say, well, if you eat this bit of chocolate before you go to bed, that's going to help you sleep, or drink this milk, or whatever it is. You then get it in your brain that if you're not going to eat that or drink that, then that becomes a problem. Then that's more anxiety driven towards the sleep. And actually, you want to sort of cut out all of that in lots of ways. If I had to, or you had to give an A-star grade to sleeping conditions, what would the A-star sleeping conditions be?
So we sleep best when it's dark and silent. So having good quality curtains. Now, blackout blinds do give you the best sleep, it's true, because it blocks out all light. However, if you get used to sleeping with blackout curtains, then when you go on holiday or you go to a Tinder date, for example, and you meet someone else and they don't have blackout curtains, you might struggle to sleep because you've been used to perfection. So there's, A-star sleeping conditions are blackout blinds, but I'd rather have the A conditions so that you're not used to perfection, because then you'll be disappointed when you go somewhere else. So yeah, so dark curtains are important, and double glazing so that it's not too noisy outside, and having a fairly cool bedroom, so sort of 16 to 18, 19 degrees Celsius is a good temperature. Lots of people have their bedrooms too hot because they have the heating on through the day and then they don't turn it off overnight, or their bedrooms have got too hot. And we'll all have experienced it in the UK if we, because we don't have air conditioning. In a heat wave, most people struggle to sleep because their bedrooms are suddenly way too hot. And obviously, mattress, you need to have a comfortable mattress. And lots of us, we might splash out and buy a really fancy mattress, but they do have a finite lifespan. And we might need to replace our mattress, even if you think, well, I did buy it in the turn of the millennium, so it's quite new. Actually, that was quite a long time ago. And if you change weight, so if you have a partner, so maybe you were single and you had a double mattress, but now you've got a partner, actually that mattress that was fine for you maybe doesn't hold the weight of two people. Children, as they grow, we don't replace their mattresses, and a teenage boy who's 16 weighs a lot more than when he was 12. So we really want to be looking at conditions and how we've changed. Or if we put on a lot of weight or have lost a lot of weight, we might need to change our mattress. And pillows, we should definitely replace those much more frequently than our mattress, and make sure that your pillow is comfortable for your sleeping style. Because if you sleep on your back or your side or your front, you'll need probably very different pillows than generic pillows. That if you and your partner, like maybe one of you sleeps on your back and one of you sleeps on your front, and you've got the same pillows, that's unlikely to be good for both of you.
I got recently told that you should flip your mattress.
Yeah, well, it depends on the kind of mattress. If you have an inbuilt topper in it, that's not going to work. But yeah, as a general rule, normal mattresses, yes, you're supposed to flip them. You're supposed to turn them like over and back to front so that you're wearing out the mattress nice and evenly. Otherwise, you might find a body-shaped, divot
Yeah.
in the bed where you normally sleep. So flipping your mattress does extend its life, and it's really good. You should also hoover it to get rid of dead skin cells and other ick that we shed a lot of dead skin cells and sweat in the night. And if we don't change our bed covers regularly, and we don't, hoover our mattress, and we don't clean our duvets and that kind of thing, then we're sleeping in a lot of built up gunk, which can cause allergies and can cause, breathing difficulties during the night, because we've basically, the dust mites live off all the dead skin cells. It's really gross. And also, if you do have your bed covers that are full of all this yuck, then the air isn't going to flow through them, and you might find that you're overheating in the night, because the air can't flow to keep you cool, because it's trapped in a layer of gunk.
I do sleep naked. Should I sleep in pajamas or should I sleep naked?
It's up to you. There are positives to both, basically.
Okay.
So if you do have nightwear, then it means that it will extend the life of your bed covers, because you've got a protection there. And also it means that if you get too hot, you can sort of throw the covers off, and you've still got a bit of layer of protection there. But equally, if you tend to overheat, then sleeping naked allows you to expose that and cool down really quickly. So there's positives and negatives to both. If it works for you, brilliant. There was interestingly a sort of study recently that said that sleeping in bed socks can be helpful, because it warms, helps with the vasodilation, helps with our sort of temperature regulation, helps us to cool down as we're trying to fall asleep. So you could try naked with bed socks. That might be good.
Before you go to bed, what are the harmful things we can take before sleeping? How harmful is alcohol?
Yeah, so my clients, lots of them, genuinely, will actively drink more before bed because they think it will help their sleep. Because if you have a couple of drinks, you fall asleep more quickly, which is true. But you don't really fall asleep, you kind of pass out. It's not the same kind of thing. And alcohol especially disrupts REM sleep, REM sleep. So although you might fall asleep more quickly, the sleep quality that you get once you're asleep after having alcohol-fueled sleep isn't as good. And if you've ever got drunk, which I'm sure you've never got drunk ever, never, what happens is you kind of pass out for 2-3 hours, but then the rest of the night your sleep is so fragmented and disrupted, because that's when you're metabolizing the alcohol, and it really is messing up your REM sleep. So I would really recommend people don't drink deliberately to help them sleep.
But Dr. I have drunk and I have fallen asleep and it's impossible to wake me up. That is solid REM sleep, surely.
Maybe your alcohol hadn't quite, maybe you drunk so much that it was still in your system and you hadn't metabolized it yet at that point.
So that idea of a nightcap is not a good idea?
No, it's not really. Not as if you're struggling with your sleep and you are trying to do something to help it, I would say there are much better options than having a deliberate nightcap before bed.
Okay, well then that leads me on to things like taking melatonin or taking sleeping pills or a Xanax. These sort of things that people unfortunately get in the habit of taking.
Yeah.
And especially if they have something like insomnia, which we're going to talk about, you sort of get caught up in this system. If you do take a sleeping pill, if you do take a Xanax or continue to take melatonin, bad or good thing?
So sleeping pills, like pharmaceutical sleeping pills, like Zopiclone, the Z drugs, these kinds of things prescribed by the doctor, they do help you to fall asleep and stay asleep better in the short term. But the trouble is, you start to become tolerant to the medication very quickly. So within a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, to start with, on day 1 or 2 of taking the sleeping pill, you're like, oh goodness, this is great. I can sleep for 7 hours. But after 2-3 weeks, maybe you're only getting 5 hours sleep. It starts to become less effective. Kind of like we become tolerant to alcohol. If you're teetotal and you have a drink, you're like, woo, party, party. But if you have a drink every single day for a week, it doesn't have the same effect. And you have to then up the alcohol and have 2 drinks to get the same buzz. The same with sleeping pills. You start to need more of the sleeping medication to get the same effect. And of course, it's not curing or fixing the problem as to why you weren't sleeping in the first place. So there is a place for sleeping pills. If you've got I don't know, you're going on an overnight flight somewhere, or you have something has gone wrong, like a really critical issue, or maybe you're in pain, sleeping pills prescribed by the doctor can be helpful for that short-term blip, or to get you, if you're really freaking out about your sleep, you're really stressed, it can kind of help just calm you down. Okay, good, I've had a night's sleep, I feel better, and then your sleep can get back to normal. But as a way to solve long-term sleeping problems, they don't solve it at all because they're not a solution. Melatonin, in the UK, you're not allowed, you can't buy it over the counter, but you can in
The
lots of other
US.
countries. Yeah, absolutely. And melatonin, it is the sleep hormone that we produce before bed. So it kind of makes sense that we would use it as a sleeping aid. However, it's more of a timing issue. So melatonin tells our body when to sleep. And for most adults, so under 55s, neurotypical adults, for most neurotypical adults, we're producing enough melatonin at night that taking more isn't going to do anything else. And melatonin is often, in that sort of group of people, more like a placebo. So you might take it and think it works, but it's probably not really doing anything. When we get a bit older and the elderly, and not I'm saying over 55 is elderly, but once we get to the older age bracket, our melatonin production can start to wane, and so therefore melatonin can sometimes be more helpful, and we can get it prescribed. And for people with ADHD, especially children with ADHD, maybe autism, they can have sometimes melatonin issues with producing melatonin, and they can get prescribed melatonin. So for some groups of people, melatonin can be helpful, but again, as a cure for insomnia, it's generally not very effective as a cure, because it's not really often the reason why people aren't sleeping. The reason why people aren't sleeping is, as you've said, anxiety.
Mouth taping
Mm-hmm.
is a big thing at the moment.
Yeah.
I tried to do it the other night and I woke up.
Please don't.
What?
Because mouth taping, so if you snore, the idea is that taping your mouth shut forces you to breathe through your nose.
Yes.
Which, and breathing through your nose is probably better. It humidifies the air. That's good. However, if you have some kind of blockage to your airway, like nasal congestion, taping one source of airflow shut, forcing you to breathe through your nose, maybe you have a nasal congestion issue, which is causing a blockage to your airway during the night, for example, in which case taping your mouth shut is terrible. So basically, mouth taping as a craze, there are advantages to it, but serious drawbacks, especially if people have sleep apnea. Then mouth taping is a horrific thing, and I'm really worried about that. And I've talked actually a lot about the dangers of mouth taping, because if your airway is fine, then it's okay. But if you have another condition, then mouth taping is going to block. Yeah, it's dangerous basically. So please don't mouth tape unless you've had your sleep apnea assessed.
I thought I was going to get a really good jawline from it. That was I was told.
Oh, I thought you meant you tape your mouth shut.
Yeah, I tape it shut,
yeah.
but then apparently it gives you a good jawline. Dr. Lindsay, what? This is what? I was going for
TikTok. It's TikTok craze. There's loads of sleep stuff on TikTok. TikTok is great, but again, it's like, where are you getting your information from? And everyone wants a quick fix. Everyone wants this sleepy girl mocktail is going to fix my sleep, or this sleep tape, or this particular thing is going to fix my sleep. But the reality is, sleeping well is about doing the right things. Eating well, exercising well, not being too stressed. And if you think you might be struggling with sleep apnea, please do not mouth tape.
So you think these sort of TikTok crazes that come up on social media are all marketing stunts?
Well, everyone wants a quick fix, don't they? I mean, it sounds great. Just like, I'd love a 6-pack. Buy this cream and rub it on, I've got a 6-pack. Oh, brilliant. But what the reality is, I need to do a lot of sit-ups. I need lots of salad to get a 6-pack, and that's a lot of work. And actually fixing your sleep is about doing the right things, not necessarily the easy things.
You do a lot of work with people who have different work patterns.
Mm-hmm.
So shifts work, typically in the police or in the NHS, where they're working mornings or late at nights and it's on a cycle. And people in the UK and around the world have this a lot, where they're constantly shifting and changing. It's like they're flying to Australia and spending 3 days in Australia and then flying back.
Mm-hmm.
How does someone in that job help themselves?
Yeah, so it's really difficult because our circadian rhythm is our body's 24-hour clock, and that's the thing that some of us are like larks and owls, and different times of the day. But generally speaking, we're all on a UK time zone. Say you're in the time zone that you're in. But when you're doing shift work, it's just like you've been plopped into another country like Australia from here, and you're trying to work when your body is saying, no, 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 it's producing melatonin. It's saying, no, we should be asleep. It's really hard. And then when you finish that shift, you come home, the sun is up, people are outside, kids are screaming, going to school, there's noise, there's activity. And then there's that sense of I shouldn't sleep because I really should pop to the shops or go and pick up that parcel. And really, you need to sleep, but the world isn't allowing it. So shift work is really difficult. What we need to do with shift workers is to understand that they need to avoid, as much as they can, bright light at the end of their shift, especially a night shift worker, because you finish your night shift and you go home and that's when the sun's coming up. And if you expose yourself to loads of bright light before you want to go to bed, that's going to suppress melatonin production and wake you up even more. People who do shift work have to be really careful about their bedrooms. So unlike 9 to 5 workers, we can, our curtains don't have to be 100% blackout blinds, say, but for shift workers, they do. And before your shift, so before you start the shift, it's a really good idea to go and have a deliberate nap, like a top-up nap just before your shift, just to like a 20-30 minute nap.
That helps?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to take the edge off that tiredness, because if you do go and start doing a night shift, your body, even if you've had loads of sleep, it's still thinking it's the middle of the night and it's really hard. So a top-up nap at that point can really, really help. And get bright light during your shift, but avoid it after the shift and at the end of it so that you can fall asleep when you get home.
Can shift work be dangerous?
So night workers tend to get about, I think it's 2 hours less sleep on average than people who work 9 to 5, a daytime worker. And that's huge in itself because that's not enough sleep. If you're getting 2 hours less than the average, you're probably not getting the recommended 7 to 9 hours sleep, which puts you at higher risk of everything. So people who work shifts, it's really important that they take more effort to prioritize their sleep than maybe 9 to 5 people who don't need to think about it as much.
God, it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But we need people to be awake all night. If we have a car accident at 2 a.m, we need doctors and nurses, and of course, the shift timing can be really critical as well.
One thing, you have your book, which is Navigating Sleeplessness: How to Sleep Deeper and Better for Longer. And the cover is lots of sheep.
It is.
Tell me about it really quick.
So it's a sort of self-help sleep book, and I wrote it as a guide, basically to help people who are stressed and anxious about their sleep, just to be calm and give them some advice that is in a really user-friendly way that isn't going to freak them out. Because sometimes there's a lot of advice about, oh my goodness, if you don't sleep well, then all this terrible stuff will happen to you. So I wrote this book to be a sort of a kind, calm friend to help you and give you some tips if you're not sleeping very well.
And it's honestly a calming cover, which is like,
not that counting sheep is like the best solution to sleep, but obviously it's it's cute.
We're going to leave the link to the description in the podcast. So if you want to go and get this book, you can just click on the link and you can get it there.
Thank you.
Dr. Lindsay, this has been amazing. Really, thank you so much for this. We like to end the conversation with 8 questions, and they're as quick as you want. So here we go. What's a saying or phrase that you'd want people to come away from this interview with?
Well, that you don't need to get a great night's sleep every night. Not sleeping well one night is completely normal. It's okay. Just get on with your day. Don't worry about it, because stressing and fixating on trying to force yourself to have a good night's sleep one night is just going to make it even less likely to happen.
Best compliment anyone's ever given you for your work?
Just that they changed their life, like genuinely. Then that's just amazing. I'm really happy to be able to do something that has that kind of impact.
What scares you most about your work?
not having enough hours to help people because I have more people that want to have help than I can physically do it. So yeah, I don't want people to not get the help that I know I can give them, but I'm only one human.
When was the last time you cried?
Probably yesterday. I'm quite an emotional person.
Same. What's something you can't let go of?
How about my teddy bear that I still sleep with every night? He's called Mel.
What's a sleeping guilty pleasure? Well, your teddy bear that you still have.
I do like to sleep a lot, and if you let me, I'll probably sleep until midday. Sometimes I like sleeping.
Biggest turn off?
People who smell bad.
Very
Please have
good.
a shower.
Very good.
Not you.
No, okay, I'll take it. I'll take a shower. I got it. Biggest turn on?
People who smell nice.
It's a good combination. And what do you like most about yourself?
I think that I am very honest, and I don't come into anything with an agenda. So if you speak to me, I'm going to try and help you because that's the right thing to do.
Dr. Lindsay Browning, this has been so amazing. You're going to help so many people, and this has been fascinating. We're going to put every single link that is about you and your work in our description, so please go to it. Thank you so much for that. That was fantastic. Thank you. That was amazing. Honestly, that was amazing.